Hey, I'm MarzGurl.
And I'm JoshKnightTheFirst.
And welcome to episode 31 of MokkoriPlay, the only podcast dedicated solely to all things City Hunter.
On today's podcast, we're going to cover episode 31 of City Hunter, titled Fast-Paced Romance, A Girl's Love Closing in Fast. Or as you said last time, closing in fast.
I just want to point out, the second I hit record, this cat, Callie, right here,
one of our two cats,
under our feet right now, decided, I'm going to pick this moment to start drinking out of the water dish that's directly behind us, and it just sounds like blah, 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 blah,
just
blah, 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 blah.
surprisingly loud, and it's just right at that moment.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Things you only understand when you're a cat owner.
Thank you, Callie. Good job.
Yeah, so this week we're dealing with star-crossed lovers set to the backdrop of motorcycle gangs.
Motorcycle gangs. It's very 80s sort of a thing. I mean, like, anytime you see motorcycle gangs come up in Japanese media, I don't know, it just looks very 80s. Like, they tried so hard to retain, this is an 80s thing.
It's like 80s, but reminiscent of, like, the 50s and 60s. That very old-school, rebel without a cause, James Dean, greaser sort of aesthetic.
Yeah, but it was super big specifically in the 80s.
Well, some of it still kept going even till now. We've seen the influence in some video games we played as recently as this last year, which we'll get to once we get to that particular scene. But we'll go ahead and get into the episode this week. So, we're starting off with two warring factions of biker gangs. We've got the Madonnas and the, I'm gonna say this wrong, the Cagliostro.
Josh, I've already, how many times do I have to tell you, you don't pronounce the G in Cagliostro.
Yeah, Cagliostro, just like the Lupin movie.
Yeah, everybody gets that wrong. It's not Castle of Cagliostro, it's Cagliostro. The G is silent.
Okay, Ud. I live to upset you.
I die because I'm upset.
And scene. So between the two gangs, we're not gonna lie to you guys, one of them you don't care about because they're really not ever gonna come up again. We only see the Madonnas at the beginning of the episode in this one scene. Mm-hmm. So the Madonnas don't like the Cagliostro gang, and the two of them are at war, but that part really doesn't matter. What matters is there's one member of the Cagliostro named Shogo, and he, unfortunately, against his will, has a girlfriend.
Well, I don't even think they're dating. I don't think that's a fair description.
Oh, he knows they're not dating.
I don't even think the girl thinks that they're dating. I think she is just very obsessed with him.
So what happened was, about 2 months back, Shogo, who's a member of the Cagliostro, as we already said, rescued this girl by the name of Ayako, who, at the time, we didn't know much about her. Shogo saved her, made sure she was okay, and then went on his merry way. Unfortunately, Ayako became very enamored with him and has since stuck to his side like glue.
She's just not leaving him alone, so in the middle of this opening fight between these two biker gangs, she's throwing money out of a helicopter that's hovering overhead over their fight, just tossing money out of the helicopter to try to get them to stop.
She's not the one doing it. It's her butler who, surprise, surprise, is named Jeeves. Wow. Just the imagination of the writing staff this episode.
I think they just thought it was a very butler name.
Of course it's a very butler name. That's like the go-to name for a butler, other than Alfred.
Yeah, well, nobody registered AskAlfred.com.
I would much sooner go to AskAlfred.com.
Of course, I could just be making that up. I didn't check to see whether AskAlfred.com is a thing. Hold on, I'll check. I have just learned that AskAlfred.com is now available for sale on HugeDomains.com. It is on sale for $4,495.
We take cash, credit card, and Venmo.
I don't need to buy AskAlfred.com.
Well, neither do I. I'm just saying if somebody wants to help us do that just for the joke.
Great. Thanks.
Okay. So as we can see here at the beginning, Ayako does not like that Shogo is in the life of a biker gang leader, or head of a biker gang, or lieutenant of a biker gang. It just doesn't matter.
Just a member of this particular biker gang.
That is a no-no for her as far as love going forward between the two of them.
Well, she just thinks he's constantly in danger all the time, and she doesn't want him to be in danger or to get hurt. That's it.
Look, sometimes when you love someone, you have to put up with the fact that they do stupid, dangerous crap. That just happens sometimes.
Yeah, like the way you drive.
What's your point?
Thank you.
I'm not denying it. It's just that as the perfect example here, you put up with that from me.
Exactly.
See? But that's the thing. Ayako, unfortunately, is only about 15 years old, so she doesn't know a lot about love and how the world works.
Or much of anything, because she's seemingly extremely sheltered and very high class. She's using vocabulary that really only high class Japanese citizens use.
Much more proper Japanese.
Right.
So when she sees that dumping cash on the crowd, because that worked so well for Gotham City when Joker poured cash on the crowd there at the end of the movie, that solved everything. That didn't seem to stop the fight.
I'm going to assume that because it's 1987, she has not seen that movie.
Yeah, because that movie doesn't come out for another 2 years. We always got to make sure the timeline's straight here on MokkoriPlay. But she decides, okay, if this didn't work, if me having my butler throw cash out the window of this helicopter, which my father probably owns, then I'm going to need professional help. And by professional help, we mean City Hunter. Now, the funny part about this is that both Shogo and Ayako both decided this problem was too big for them to handle alone, and they both contact City Hunter.
I wonder which one of them got there first. Like, one of them writes on the board, and then the other one gets there like, hey, somebody else has contacted City Hunter here too. Huh. Wonder what that's about, and has to go about their business.
Well, so there's two messages. There's one pretty big-sized message on the board, and then there's a much smaller, neater message toward the bottom. The smaller, neater message was most likely written by Jeeves, because that's the one that Ryo ends up showing up to. And the larger one is the one Cowdy ends up showing up to, so kind of a divide and conquer sort of thing.
Didn't you just tell me that's not what divide and conquer means?
Actually, you're right. Nobody ever uses that correctly. Divide and conquer means divide your enemies and conquer them, not split up.
Great, we're using it the way everybody uses it, which is the incorrect way.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Moving on. So yeah, because they can't be in two places at the same time, Cowdy decides to go ahead and take the first thing she saw on the board, which was Shogo's request, and then Ryo is sent to go to the restaurant where that request will be taken on with Ayako.
So basically, long story short, because we already explained half of this is where both of these characters explain themselves, and we've already kind of covered the explanation of the both characters. So Ayako's telling Ryo, hey, stop my not quite boyfriend from being in this biker gang because that upsets me and I'm scared that he's gonna hurt himself, and if you don't do it, then I'm gonna bite off my own tongue and commit suicide, which is really kind of messed up.
And then Cowdy goes to her meeting with Shogo. She asks, okay, well, what's the request? And Shogo asks, can you pretend to be my girlfriend? That way Ayako can leave me the hell alone. If you don't do this for me, I will commit suicide.
So, we're just batting 100 here this episode for just really great people.
Yeah, these kids are being very manipulative doing this to adults, mind you.
Right.
I mean, granted, Cowdy's 20 right now, right?
Something like that, yeah.
And Ryo's however old he is, because we're not technically told.
No, although there's a lot of assumptions that are like, this dude might be kind of around 30.
He's pushing 30 at least.
He might be pushing 30. We don't know.
But the fact that they're having to do this and Ryo and Cowdy are having to tread lightly around them, I feel bad for them this week.
I agree.
Because, of all the things they get to do, like diamond heists, or taking down the mafia, or getting revenge for Makimura, big, high-stakes things, saving the world. And then this week, babysitting, basically.
Ryo doesn't do anything too terribly awful this week. The only thing that comes close to skirting this is that we're learning that Ayako might be approximately 15 years old, and the way we learn this is like, oh man, she's got it real bad for this dude.
For Shogo.
For Shogo, and maybe she should not be doing that, and I really don't want to be the babysitter. So the one kind of iffy thing he says is like, look, I know what's gonna solve this problem. Just forget about that guy, which actually would be really great advice in
I would
most
agree
cases.
with that.
Like, oh, if your boyfriend is in a motorcycle gang, that actually could be really dangerous and could get you in trouble too, so maybe don't be in love with that guy. But then he also continues and says, just wait another 3 years and I'll be your boyfriend. That's the weird thing to say.
Yeah.
But I don't really think he means it all that hard. He's just trying to get her mind off of this dude.
Right, because thankfully Ryo doesn't push the point beyond beyond that.
No, it never comes up again.
Yeah,
No.
thankfully. So again, we're dealing with a mostly okay Ryo this week.
Right.
So Kaori reluctantly agrees on her end to go ahead and pretend to be Shogo's girlfriend so he can ride right up to the mansion that Ayako lives in, which luckily he shows up just as she's pulling up in her like limo or something. She gets out, "Oh, I'm so happy to see you." And Shogo's like, "Yeah, hey, great. Hey, have you met my fiance yet?"
Poor Ayako's just like, "Oh, you have a fiance. Well, that's nice. I'm glad you're so happy. Bye." He just goes running off into her mansion,
And then
sobbing.
Kaori's just over here caught in the middle like, "Oh man, she's cute
And
she's
Jeeves-
nice and like
Jeeves is there crying for her, like, "Oh my god, I love her like my own daughter, and this is so sad."
I want to take a moment here before I forget to talk about it. This week we see Kaori wearing what I call the flight suit, the Amelia Earhart getup.
The Ghostbusters jumpsuit, and we've talked about it before.
Yeah, I really like that fit on her.
Well, it's okay.
It's not quite up to the good jacket, but
Next week is the good jacket.
Next week is the good jacket. I love it anytime they do that, but my second favorite is this one.
Okay.
But yeah, she's out there like, okay, yeah, I'm happy to be involved with Shogo, yes. And that's all it really took for Ayako to lose heart and then run off crying. And Kaori's like, well, I guess I did my job. I should leave, right? I'm done here. And Shogo decides to treat her, in my mind, this is kind of scummy of him, almost like a prostitute. Like, no, I paid you for the full day. You're my girlfriend for the full day. And it's like, hey, come on, man.
Mind you, he's not really asking her to do anything other than be there. It kind of sounded like he was slowly coming up with some kind of a plan, but he didn't really have a very good one, because we're seeing, as he realizes, he watches this girl's heart break in real time, and he's just kind of like, oh shit. And he just realized...
Look, Lisa, you can pinpoint the exact moment her heart breaks in two.
Yeah, so dude clearly has finally realized, you know, like a grown adult human being, oh, doing this was like the wrong way to go about doing it, but he hasn't quite admitted it out loud yet.
And mind you, he's still pretty young and single track minded. So how does he get over this? I'm just gonna put the pedal to the metal and I'm just gonna drive. That's how I'm gonna get through this.
I'm just gonna ride.
Which, admittedly, I'm jealous. I wish I had that option. I wish I had a motorcycle.
I know, I'm sorry.
Now, unfortunately for Shogo, the other guy who heads the gang over there at the Cagliostro, a guy by the name of Makoto, has found out that all this stuff has been going on with him and Ayako, and finds out that Ayako's dad is the head of the Rokumeikan group, which means she's loaded. So they decide, okay...
Wait. What does Rokumeikan group do? Like, they own a restaurant. They own the restaurant that Ryo met her in.
At the very beginning, yes.
And what else? Is that...
They don't really expound upon that.
He just owns things?
Yes.
He owns lots of things.
He's a businessman.
Okay, fine.
He does business. But really, that's all we need to know. So this Makoto guy gets to scheme and like, okay, all right, he doesn't want to deal with this girl. I know what we're going to do. We're going to make bank today. So that night after Shogo has driven off with Kaori, unfortunately for Ayako, she's just up there in her room like, I'm okay. This is all nice and good. I'm going to become a nun. It's fine.
You know, the logical thing that a 15-year-old girl would do once her heart breaks, just decide to become a nun. That's exactly the logical thing to do.
So Makoto sends one of his dudes to go like throw rocks at her window like, hey, that Shogo guy you like, he sent us. Yeah, you're supposed to come with us. We're here to get you. Yeah, that's what it is. And unfortunately, Ayako fully believes it because that's what she wants to believe. Like, oh, really? He sent for me? And, you know, this is one of the easier kidnappings we've ever seen in the show.
She's extremely naive. This is how I know that she's extremely sheltered. Because no one has taught her, hey, strangers sometimes do bad things.
So later that night, after this has happened, Ryo has decided to do his part. And he's really committing to a character here to go ahead and do his part and try to convince Shogo to leave his biker gang. So we're led to assume that this is all happening in the basement of the apartment in the garage that we assume houses like 10,000 Mini Coopers.
This was my question because we see him have this montage sequence of like he's suiting up in this motorcycle jumpsuit and he's putting his helmet on and then he straddles this Harley Davidson and then the garage door opens up and he drives out of the garage on this Harley and I'm like, is that his garage? So he has his own motorcycle.
Yeah, he had a Harley.
Which says to me, oh my god, what else does he have down there?
Now, just between the two of us, because, as we mentioned from time to time here, we both enjoy certain tokusatsu. And while he was suiting up, and then when you see the garage door opening...
Oh, it's very Kamen Rider
Very
Black.
Kamen Rider Black. That's the opening to that series. About the same time period,
Came
actually.
out about the same year? Was it the same
87?
year?
Yeah, thereabouts.
I wonder which one was out already by that point. That's a thing to think about, actually.
We're gonna have to think about that, yeah. But yeah, Ryo decides, all right, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna ride all the way up to the Cagliostro gang and I'm gonna present myself as the lone wolf. And it's like, what are you doing, man? This isn't D&D. You don't have to come up with a backstory.
I just want to point out, remember last week, I think it was, when we were asking, hey, remember when Ryo rode up on a motorcycle to save Kaori and the other guy they were trying to protect?
Yeah, at the end of last week's episode.
Yeah, and we were like, is that his motorcycle? Where did he get that motorcycle? So he's got one of those? Was it a different motorcycle?
Are you serious? Do you think Ryo took a motorcycle instead of the Mini to get up there last week?
Well, I'm asking you.
I mean, if he's got one.
Was it a different motorcycle?
It was a different motorcycle.
Oh my god, Ryo has multiple motorcycles.
He has a whole motorcade, Kalen.
He has Jay Leno's garage,
Oh
Josh.
my god. Well, somebody else should have that garage.
Yeah, it should be Ryo. Anyway.
So Ryo goes riding up to the Cagliostro gang, and he challenges them to a duel. Specifically, he challenges Shogo to a duel. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna race. If I lose, you get my bike and my life. But if I win, you have to disband Cagliostro tonight.
So this is a mini game in Lost Judgment.
This literal plot point right here of I will race you to disband the biker gang tonight.
So I don't know if that's a thing that Lost Judgment directly lifted from City Hunter, or if this is just a really common kind of story element.
I imagine it must be a little common because, it's not like we haven't seen other biker gang things come up in other media.
Sure.
Great Teacher Onizuka comes to mind. There's a lot of biker gang culture influence in that too.
Right.
So I imagine it's something that repeats itself over and over again. Like you go back to this trope of I will race you for my honor and to defend my biker gang while you're trying to break us apart.
But also there is a part in that side quest in Lost Judgment where one of the members of the biker gang has a girlfriend and her family doesn't like that he's in the biker gang.
Yes,
and
yes.
She's trying to get him to quit the biker gang and he doesn't want to do it. So that element is also in that side quest.
Yeah, that very much so. Like, you could play this if you wanted to. If you want to experience this episode of City Hunter for yourself, go pick up Lost Judgment.
Yeah.
So they agree, all right, we're gonna ride and we're gonna race for it, it's on. And so they start racing off, Ryo versus Shogo, and it looks like it's gonna be pretty cool, Harley on one side, the Suzuki that everybody in Cagliostro seems to be riding. I thought it was weird that they were all riding the same bike. You see there at the beginning, they've all got like red Suzukis, except for Shogo, who has like a white and blue Suzuki.
I mean, maybe they all agreed upon, like, hey, this is the cool bike that is specific to our gang. If you want to join our gang, you have to have this bike.
Yeah, but that seems like very,
restrictive?
Yeah, restrictive.
I don't know. Motorcycle gangs are weird, man. I don't know.
I guess. But in the middle of this, Makoto and his section of the gang pull up like, hey, we kidnapped that girl. All right, let's go take her to her hideout. And they ride directly past Shogo as if he's not gonna notice that's going on.
Or maybe their assumption was that he wasn't gonna care because he already told them, I don't care about her. Like, he's trying to pretend that in his own head, he's trying to tell himself that he's blowing her off.
Right, but at the same time, it's not like he's a bad dude. Like, he wasn't going to say no to kidnapping.
Like he would say no to kidnapping.
Right, exactly. Like, he would see that and then you thought he wasn't gonna have a problem? Yeah, he was gonna have a problem. He said he didn't care. He didn't say, go kidnap her and I won't think anything of it. Those two things aren't the same thing.
I mean, maybe that gang doesn't know that. Maybe they really think, well, you're part of the gang, so clearly you're gonna be down for whatever it is we do.
So, Shogo catches back up to them back at Warehouse 13, which is literally their hideout there at the docks, and he asks them, hey, come on, what's going on? Makoto, I thought we stood for something. I thought we stood for virtue and honor and truth and all those things that we were riding hard for. And Makoto tells him, nah, man. Cash. I'm here for a war chest.
Cash money. We can only expand our gang if we have the funds from this kidnapping. And they're gonna pay us this ransom money for her. She's super rich, man. She's loaded. They're gonna pay us to get her back.
And since you don't like that, you can be locked up with her. And so they end up putting him in the, I feel remiss saying the brig, but this isn't a pirate ship, but like, I guess their makeshift prison, the room they can't get out of or aren't supposed to get out of.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this little scene between Ayako and Shogo, and I can't help but still feel sorry for Shogo because maybe it was just the voice actress or maybe it's just the portrayal, but to me, Ayako comes off as very annoying.
Oh, I'm sure that's just her, A, being a 15-year-old girl, and B, being of high society.
Well, yeah, because they get locked up in there, and she's just like, oh, I'm just so happy you're in the room here with me. Here, look at the sky with me. And it's like, you do realize you're being held ransom, right? Like, he's not going to come save you. He's locked up in here with you. This is a bad situation to be in.
Yeah, that does not matter now. She got to be exactly where she wanted to be. She's fine.
She is a child.
Yes.
So far as I can tell, they must have gotten that threat out of the kidnapping pretty quick because within the next day, we're back at Ryo's apartment and Jeeves has shown up with all of the ransom money.
With just a briefcase full of cash.
Which tells me something like, does Ayako's father have a legitimate business? Because usually when it comes to most kidnapping cases, you don't have a lot of liquid cash floating around. You got to move some stuff around to get that kind of cash.
Maybe he did it very quickly.
Yeah, but in order to do that, one, you either have to have some really incredibly high stakes and power in whatever it is you do, or two, you just had that kind of cash lying around, and usually that means you're laundering it.
I mean, movies tell me that very rich people have their own personal saves in their own homes, and they just have a bunch of cash in there.
Maybe. Like, it's somewhere between that and Fargo is what I'm saying.
Right, I understand.
As far as kidnapping cases go. Now, I think it's really important that we go over this little bit here. We have this moment between Kaori and Ryo where Ryo's going over the case and he's thinking out loud to himself, there's just one thing I don't understand. Why did Shogo hire Kaori to be his girlfriend? And Kaori straight up asks, again, echoing the end of last episode, oh, are you jealous that he asked me to be his girlfriend for pretend? Did that get to you? And Ryo just plays it off like, it's one of the great mysteries. We'll never know why that is. It's so unknown. We're gonna have to call Robert Stack. Unsolved Mysteries here.
Okay, he doesn't go on that long, but it's weird that he even wondered that out loud, and then he didn't even expect, oh, I might have to follow up with an answer to this question. And I guess he was not expecting her to even ask that question, and then he just has to play it off like, nope, we're just not actually going to directly answer the question you just asked me.
Because I can get him saying that to get a rise out of her, which, as we've covered before, he enjoys doing. Because after he says the second part of, it's one of the great mysteries, he gets whacked with a 100-ton hammer. But it's the fact that he brought it up at all still kind of hints at something there, like, hey man, like, why'd you bring it up at all? Even if you're just doing it to get a rise out of her, there's still a little hint of you could be coming across as a little jealous.
Well, even Kaori beginning to think about asking if that's what it is also, I think, shows a little bit of progress on both of their parts.
Stop me if I'm wrong here. Did she look not a little bit happy that might be what was going through his head? Like there in the animation?
Well, happy,
like she had a
yes.
thought happening right there.
Well, happy, yes, but it's difficult to tell whether that's happiness that somebody would be jealous for her, or happy because she thinks it's funny. It's difficult to say.
Well, because I find it harder to believe that Kaori gets a rise out of Ryo getting jealous. I think it's more what it looks like of the base amount of she wants him to be jealous because on some level she's starting to like him.
Or sometimes getting that sort of attention from somebody is just a nice feeling to have.
I mean, that is true. And that makes 2 times within the past 2 weeks that's happened for Kaori.
That's true.
So now it's time for the drop. Ryo heads out in his lone wolf getup out to Warehouse 13, shows up with the money, and while he's trying to make the exchange, Shogo makes his escape, tricks whoever's guarding the door to think he's not in the cell, and he busts out. Ryo's trying to ask, okay, I've given you the money, now where are the hostages? Where is Ayako? And of course, like you would figure, Makoto is double-crossing him, like, nah man, this is the down payment.
Nah, that's only half of it. We'll contact you about the other half later, her.
And it's at this moment that Shogo decides to come riding into the rescue on his Suzuki, and a whole big old brawl ensues while he's there on the motorcycle. Kaori decided to jump in too this week with a board with a bunch of nails in it.
There's some really good animations as some of these members of the motorcycle gang are kind kind of getting clocked. They get big eyes, big bulging eyes. And
very cartoony.
Tongues sticking out of their mouths.
I love it.
Moves really fast, but it is very cartoony and very funny.
And Shogo seems to be doing pretty alright for himself until literally a wrench gets thrown in the works.
Was it a wrench?
It was literally a wrench. A wrench gets thrown at his front wheel, knocking him off his motorcycle, and it looks like he's down for the count. But then to his rescue comes Ayako doing a sick wheelie.
Which she is absolutely not doing on purpose. She's just like, how do you make go? And then she puts her foot down on the throttle.
Or on the clutch.
Yeah, on the clutch. And she just takes off because this is rear wheel drive, baby. And the wheel just pops up in front of her and she does not know what she's doing. And she goes flying head first off this bike. And he's got to catch her mid-air. And they both fall to the ground, but they're both also kind of okay at this point.
And she's like, oh, that was fun.
Motorcycles are kind of alright, actually.
Now, right now, there's a hint of romance to this because he's having to come to her rescue again. And during this whole section right here, with him coming in with the motorcycle and then Ayako coming in with the motorcycle, we've got that Baby I Want Your Love insert song playing.
Mm-hmm.
So usually there's, that going along with the little hints of romance. But now the whole biker gang's been pissed off and they need to be taken care of. So now we need to switch songs from Baby I Want Your Love to Footsteps. And now Ryo is going to clean house.
And he's doing it almost entirely without the use of his gun. So there's a lot of punches, a lot of kicks, and there's one really good slap. Like a left-handed slap.
He's got to keep his pimp hand strong.
And it's a lefty slap, too. Like,
yeah.
Oh my god.
That's the one you don't see coming.
Yeah.
Like most defensive martial arts, they teach you to block from both sides, but predominantly, most people use their right, so they favor that. So usually when you get hit with the left, you don't see it coming. Mm-hmm. Same with boxing,
Right.
And so one guy who's not Makoto tries getting away with the briefcase full of cash. Now he has to pull the gun out, shoot the case and let the cash go flying. And then dude's like the thug from the very beginning of Batman, Ryo's walking up really slow-mo on him, trying to be all badass, and he's like, what are you? And Ryo's like, I'm not gonna tell you.
It's not even gonna dignify it with a response and an answer. Just like, hey man, maybe just GTFO. Cause if you found out, it'd probably be worse for you. And he's like, fine, I believe you, bye! And
dude just books it. And so with this, both cases have been taken care of. Because one, Cowdy already took care of her thing earlier in the day, so she was golden.
Well, so she's fulfilled, yes, I've been a girlfriend for a day. I don't know if this went the way you thought it was going to go, sir, but I agreed to your terms and I just stood around there being your girlfriend, so I hope she got paid for that. I hope he paid her.
And then it would appear that within the next scene, we see both Ayako and Shogo riding off relaxing style. She's got herself her own scooter now.
Oh, adorable.
Yes, it's kind of the scooter you want, but it's not quite a Vespa.
No, but it is a cute little motor scooter. I would like it. I would ride it. It looks fun. Nice teal kind of a color.
Kind of the same as the good jacket the Cowdy wears.
Mm-hmm.
And we see as they're riding by, having changed their minds about each other, she enjoys motorcycle riding now, and now he's decided, you know what, she's not so annoying, and so they're riding together.
And so you have to assume, well, I guess he's not in that gang anymore. Why would he have stuck around in that gang? So somehow, successfully, Ryo managed to fulfill his duty as well in making this promise to Ayako that, okay, I will get your not-quite boyfriend out of the motorcycle gang for you.
Now, if that's the case, that's great, but I feel like it's such a hard right, it could have fit in Final Fantasy VIII as far as I've decided to like this girl now.
I understand what you mean. There's gonna be a whole lot of... if anybody's listening who understands Final Fantasy VIII, we might have just started a fight over how legitimate the romance in Final Fantasy VIII is, and we are of the mind that it's not that legitimate, and lots of other people are gonna be like, no, it's a beautiful and a perfect romance, and I love it, and it's the greatest. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. When there are other better written romances.
And this is a City Hunter podcast, so that's as much as I'm gonna expound upon that. So I'm sorry we went off on that tangent.
And Get Wild starts playing right there. This is the end of the episode, but as we're seeing them ride off, we also see that Ryo and Cowdy see them riding off, and as happens a couple of times within the show, it looks like they just got done shopping because, Ryo's laden down with a bunch of giant boxes and a bunch of shopping bags.
That I'm sure Kaori made him buy and carry.
And that's where we leave off the episode, so we're led to assume, because they said at the beginning of the episode, Cowdy, when she's checking the board, says, oh, thank God, this is our first job in like 2 weeks. So they've had a bit of a dry spell between the last episode and this one. And it makes me wonder, like, one, how much did they get paid from both of them? Because you imagine Shogo couldn't pay that much because he's just a biker, but Ayako is loaded. So she probably made good on it.
Well, maybe she might have even promised, oh, did you promise to pay this lady? Don't worry about it. I'll cover both of these tabs for us.
She could have done it.
Yeah.
Because it looks like she's got trust fund money.
Entirely possible.
So, the thing about it is, you see in other episodes, you'll see later on in the series, where Cowdy will get on Ryo's case for blowing all their money on booze and chicks at the hostess clubs. And here, I wonder if it's not kind of the opposite of, did Cowdy just blow a bunch of that money on clothes? Because those look like clothing shopping bags.
That's what it looks like to me.
Now, again, like, we're at the end of the episode. The show's over, as far as that goes. But now I'm having to wonder about the contents of what she's bought.
I am in no way curious about the things that she bought.
I'm kind of curious because specifically, we know that Ryo has some kind of stake in some of the things she wears.
What are you talking about? Just because he likes rooting through her clothes sometimes.
Well, specifically the good lingerie.
Yeah, well, that doesn't mean that he, quote-unquote, has a stake in it. He's just gonna figure out what it is that she's got.
Well, when I say stake, specifically relating to Ryo, I mean the stake in his pants.
I know you're trying to make some goofy joke, but even then, like, he's gonna find out what she bought later. He's not going, you should buy this, Kaori. And even if he did, Kaori is absolutely not going to trust his judgment.
But I imagine it could also be a thing of her deciding to be like, look, he's gonna look through it anyway later. I might as well just let him see it in the bag now.
So it's her decision.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I wonder about it.
Okay, that was a weird direction to go in. I just need you to know that.
Well, unfortunately, Ryo's a weird kind of guy.
But you're not Ryo.
No, I'm not. I just wonder about him sometimes. I worry about that boy.
Okay.
So that's going to do it for this week. So next week's episode, we're going to have a really big episode because we've got both Sayako and Umibozu coming back.
They're back, and there's some dude from Ryo's past, or something, or some other American mercenary.
There's a lot of American mercenaries who come after Ryo.
Or at least foreign mercenaries. I'm pretty sure this one's American.
I think he is. This is a good action-packed episode we got coming up.
Yeah, I am excited for that.
So there'll be a lot of that, a lot of build-up between Cowdy and Ryo as to how this showdown between this new mercenary goes down. So you'll want to tune in for that.
So come back next time when we cover the 32nd episode of the TV series, Don't Die, Ryo! Hard-Boiled Magnum.
And if you want to catch us outside this podcast, you can always find us both over on Twitter. I'm at JoshKnightTheFirst.
And I'm at MarzGurl. Thank you all so much for listening to our 31st episode of MokkoriPlay. And if you don't come back next episode, I'm going to be sticking with the classics and nailing Josh with a 100-ton hammer.
You know what? I appreciate the classics. Thank you.